Hello everyone. Today we are going to explore one of the most efficient automation tools in Salesforce, record triggered flows, with a special focus on before-save flows. Record triggered flows run automatically in response to changes to a record, whether it is created, updated, or deleted. They allow you to build powerful real-time automation without writing any Apex code. In this session, we will focus specifically on before-save flows, which are optimized for performance and designed to make in-memory changes to a record before it is saved to the database. These flows are ideal for use cases like auto-populating fields, standardizing data format, or enforcing business rules quickly and efficiently. We will walk through how to configure a before-save flow, what actions are supported, and how to use them effectively in real-world scenarios, especially within our recruiting application. By the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of how to leverage before-save flows to improve data quality, reduce reliance on Apex, and streamline your automations. In today's session, we will explore a high-performance type of record-triggered flows, the before-save flows, as explained earlier, and understand how it helps streamline same record updates efficiently. We will begin with a quick overview of record-triggered flows and how they compare to older tools like workflow rules and process builder. We will define what before-save flows are, when they run, and why they are ideal for fast in-memory field updates. You will learn which flow elements are allowed in before-save flows and understand what is restricted to keep them lightweight. We will walk through a live demo where we use a before-save flow to update job application fields based on interview stage changes. We will highlight key limitations and best practices to help you avoid common design mistakes when using before-save flows. We will briefly discuss how before-save flows offer faster execution and better governor limit usage than other automation tools. Finally, we will preview our next session where we will explore after-save flows used for creating related records, sending emails, and more. In this section, we are setting the foundation for understanding record-triggered flows, one of the most important types of automation in Salesforce Flow. A record-triggered flow runs automatically when a record is created, updated, or deleted. This makes it conceptually similar to triggers, workflow rules, and process builders, but with far greater flexibility and performance benefits. Unlike process builders, which only runs after a record is saved and supports limited logic, record-triggered flows offer more control over execution timing before versus after, higher performance through in-memory execution, full access to flows rich toolset like assignments, formulas, etc., better scalability and reusability with subflows, conditions, and trigger order. This makes record-triggered flows the preferred alternative to legacy tools. In today's session, we will focus on one of the two main types before-save flows, the most efficient automation path for simple, high-speed logic. Building on our introduction to record-triggered flows, let us now dive deeper into one of the most efficient and commonly used types, the before-save flow. These flows are designed to run before a record is committed to the database, giving you a powerful way to automate logic that needs to happen immediately and efficiently without triggering database operations. The key benefits of before-save flows are as follows. Before-save flows executes before the save operation, allowing to modify fields on the record before it is returned to the database. These run entirely in memory, meaning it doesn't perform any DML, which makes it extremely fast and governor limit friendly. It enables real-time field updates, giving users immediate feedback or ensuring clean, standardized data. It is best suited for simple updates, assignments, and decisions, making them lightweight, scalable, and ideal for high-volume environments. Before-save flows are the go-to option when you need to update fields on the current record based on logic or business rules. For example, setting default values, calculating a score, or adjusting status fields based on stage or type. Now that we understand where before-save flows fit in, let us take a closer look at the specific actions they support and how those actions can be used to automate routine updates and maintain data integrity across your org. In the previous slides, we explored the key characteristics of before-save flows, how they run entirely in memory, enable real-time automation, and are best suited for lightweight updates and decisions. Now let us take a closer look at the specific actions supported in before-save flows and also clarify what actions are not supported. On this slide, you will see a list of actions that are allowed in before-save flows. These include field updates on the same record without using DML, assignment elements to store or modify data in variables, decision elements to branch logic based on record conditions, formulas to calculate values dynamically, global constants and variables to drive logic or default values. These core actions allow you to create fast, efficient automation that updates records based on conditions such as updating status fields, calculating priority, or autofilling dates. Although loops appear in Flow Builder, they are not recommended in Before-Save Flow due to governor limits and performance consideration, and in most use cases, they should be avoided. Now, it is just as important to understand what isn't supported in the Before-Save Flow. You cannot use create, update, delete records for other objects. You cannot display screens or collect user input. You cannot use subflows, Apex actions, or HTTP callouts. You cannot send email alerts or launch scheduled paths. These restrictions are intentional. They ensure that Before-Save flows remain high performing and execute instantly without consuming DML or creating execution delays. If your automation requires actions beyond simple field updates on the same record, consider moving it to after save flow. In the next slide, we will walk through a practical Before-Save Flow demo built on the recruiting app, where we will use supported actions like assignments and decisions to update job application status and automate business logic, all without a single line of code. This demo shows how we can instantly update key fields on a job application when an interview stage changes, without writing code or running extra database operation. We trigger the flow whenever the interview stage field changes. The flow updates the status field, sets a recruiter if it is blank, marks compliance or document flags, and stamps the last modified date, all before the record is saved. Since this is a Before-Save flow, everything runs in memory, making it much faster than other automation methods. It's ideal for same record updates, where we want the changes reflected immediately on save. This table shows how each interview stage in our recruiting app maps to a corresponding status value. The flow uses these mappings to automatically keep the application status aligned with its current interview stage. For example, if a candidate reaches the final round, the flow updates their status to awaiting offer. This ensures consistency and removes manual data entry errors. You can adapt this table to match your organization's specific recruiting process. The first step here is to create a flow. For that, I am going to set up home, typing flows in the quick find and clicking on new flow. When you click on new flow, you get various options. For this example, I want to create a record triggered flow. So you can find it in the frequently used section, or you can click on triggered and select record triggered flow. I'm selecting frequently used, clicking record triggered flow, and it will open the record triggered flow window. It also gives some help panels. So I'm just dismissing it right now. The first step here is to select the object on which you want to perform this operation. So I'm selecting the object as job application. Then I want to execute this whenever there is a change in interview stage. So I'm selecting record is updated. And I want to only execute this whenever there is a stage change. So I'll click on all conditions are met and I'll check if job application stage is changed equal to true. Here, if you observe, you have various options like you can check is changed regional, contains, ends with, starts with, does not equal to. So I want to execute my flow whenever the stage changes. And in order to create a Before-Save Flow trigger, you will select fast field updates. The fast field updates ensures that this flow runs as a Before-Save Flow trigger, which means before the data is committed to database. And I'll click on save. Once I click on save, it will ask for the name of the flow. So I'll give the name of flow as job application Before-Save Flow. When you go to show advanced, you have various other options here. So it will tell like what is the type of this flow. You can use a template and use that template for the flow, but I am not using any template here. You can make this a template as well. So currently the API version that I am selecting is 64. 64 is the latest version. So assume that you have 50 Before-Save Flow triggers on this particular job application object. You can specify what the order in which this should execute. So for interview label, I'm giving this label and clicking on save. Whenever the interview stage is initial screening, I want the status to be under review. When it is phone interview, I want it to be in progress, and so on and so forth. I'll use this mapping table and construct the flow as a next step. For this, I'm going to the respective flow that I created. And the first thing that I'll do is I'll add a decision element and I'll give a decision element name as interview stage changes. And the first outcome that I want to do is whenever the interview stage is initial screening, I want the status to be updated to under review. For this, I will check whether the stage is equal to initial screening. And if it is, then I will do an assignment to under review. I'll add the first outcome as 7 initial screening. And the condition that I'll use here is I want to use the triggering record. And if you observe, Salesforce provides you two options here. It will provide a prior value trigger and a new value. So before committing data, you have a new value and an old value. So if you want to use the old value, use prior value. If you want to use the new value, you use the triggering job application value. So I want to use the new value or the changed value. So I'll select triggering record dot stage if it is equals to initial screening. So whenever it is initial screening, I want to perform an operation. So when it's initial screening, I want to add an assignment element. So I'll click on add element, or I'll click on the plus button and I'll select assignment element. I'll give a label for this assignment element as date status to under review. And I'll select triggering job application record dot status is equal to under review, and I'll click on save. Whenever the interview stage changes to initial screening, this assignment will be executed and it will assign the value of status to under review. Similarly, I'll perform operation for other. Whenever it is offer declined and rejected, in both cases I want the status to be rejected. So I will do this first and I'll do the rest after that. I'll go to the decision box. I want to add one more outcome. So I'll click on new outcome and I will say when rejected or offer declined. Assume that the candidate has declined the offer or the interviewer has rejected the candidate. In both scenarios, I want to set the status as rejected. So the first condition that I'll write here is triggering record dot stage if it is equal to offer declined, and I want to add one more condition, record triggering record dot stage equals to rejected. If any of these two conditions are true, then I want to execute this block. So for that reason, I'll say all conditions met or, and I'll click on save. Now within this block, I will add an assignment again. I'll say update status to rejected. I'll select record.status equals to rejected and I'll click on save. I'll continue doing it for other options. So to reiterate, in our decision box, we can have multiple conditions added as of multiple outcomes. For each outcome, so we can have a condition. So we can have multiple conditions or a single condition. And whenever these conditions are met, that outcome will be executed and whatever elements are within the outcome will be invoked. So within each of these outcomes, since this is the before save flow trigger, I don't want to do an additional DML. So I am doing an assignment. So I'm assigning the status value to the respective value that I wanted to update. And also remember, Salesforce also provides update records action. Though it is called update records action, internally it is going to do assignment. It is not going to call an additional DML even if you use this option. So if you want to see again the types of elements, you can, instead of doing auto layout, you can do freeform layout. This will show you the various elements that before save flow trigger supports. It supports a custom error element. Usually if I'm doing a get records action, I will go ahead and do a custom error because get records can sometimes, if there is some problem in the retrieval process. Assignment is used for assigning a value to a variable. In this case, the variable that I'm using is the object record itself. Decision is used for writing multiple outcomes. So we have already seen an example. Loop is used for looping a list of records. Collection sort is used for sorting the list that you got. You can also do filter by using collection filter. Update records, as I told you, before save flow trigger, update records behaves the same way as assignment. Get records can be used for retrieving any record from database. Now let us see a demonstration of our flow. I'm going to the recruiting app and job application object, and I'm pulling one job application record. When I change the stage from technical interview to manager round and save, the status is automatically updated to manager evaluation. When I change stage from manager to initial screening, it is updated to under review. All these changes are happening in memory because these changes are coming from a before save flow. If I change any other field, say for example, if I change offer details sent to HR system and click on save, you see there is no change in this field. So this ensures that we did both positive as well as negative testing. The second requirement that I have is to assign a recruiter if recruiter is blank on job application. We will implement this requirement by using round robin recruitment assignment using a before-save flow with a history based approach. This logic ensures that each new job application record is automatically assigned to the next recruiter in the rotation based on the most recently assigned recruiter from the last committed record. Let me log into my org. From quick find, I'll enter flows, click on new flow. So I'll select record trigger flow. The first step is to select the object. I'll select the object as job application, and I'll select a record is created or updated. The condition that I want to use here is when job applications recruiter field is equal to empty. So whenever the recruiter is blank, then I want to execute this flow, and I want to do a before save flow trigger. That's why I'll select fast field updates and click on save. And I'll give a name to this as job application round robin recruiter assignment. Click on save. The first thing that I'll do here is I'll get the list of recruiters. For that, I've already pre-created some users in my org. My org has a profile called as recruiters, and this recruiter is assigned to two different users, recruiter 1 and recruiter 2. Now, whenever a new job application is created, or whenever the recruiter field of job application is blank and if it is edited, I want to auto assign that job application to one of these two recruiters. But I don't want to overload one single recruiter. For that, I'm using a round robin approach. I want to get these available recruiters. So these available recruiters, since they are users, I'm going to do a get records action, and I'll call it as get available recruiters. You can use some description to this. So here the object where my recruiters are is user object. I'll select users. I want to only get the active users if active is true. So I know that all my recruiters are under profile called recruiter. So for every record in Salesforce, as you know, there is a record ID. For this profile also there is a record ID which starts with 00E. I'll select this record ID and I'll get all the users associated to this particular profile ID. And I want to get all users, and I want to store all the users in a variable. So I'll say choose fields and assign variables advanced. And I want to create a record collection variable because this is going to give me multiple records of type user. So I have to create a list of user to collect that. So for that, I'm creating a new resource, a variable. I'll call this as recruiters. So type is record. I want to allow multiple values. So I'll say allow multiple values, a collection. Object I want to store is user. So I'll select user. I'll click on done. Now what this will do, this get records action is going to get me users stored by this profile ID and who are active, and it will get all records. So in this case, I'm storing ID of the record as well as the name of the user. So ID and name is what I'm storing here. So whenever you are using a get records action, you have an option to add filters. So we have already seen how to filter it based on profile ID. You can also sort the records. So you can provide the ascending, descending order and sort it by a field. When you select sorting, it will ask by what field. So I'm not doing any sorting here. You can get only the one record, or you can get all records with a limit. You can say get me 100 records or get me 200 records. You can get between 2 and 20,000 records. So in this case, I'm getting all records. You can store all fields, which is not efficient because if user has 800 fields, it will get me all the fields which I'm not interested in. Or you can choose fields and let Salesforce do the rest, or I'm selecting the more advanced option where I am giving the name for my collection. If you select second option, you will not have an option to create a collection variable. So Salesforce will do automatically create a collection variable behind the scenes. So I'm selecting the third option, giving the respective name and pulling only the fields that I'm interested in. So once I'm done with this, I'll click on save. I want to get the most recently assigned job application. When you create an object in Salesforce, Salesforce automatically creates an audit field called last modified date. I want to get the last modified records recruiter, and I want to use that as a base for my logic. So I'll use get records here again. Get last modified job application. So here the object that I want to use is job application, and the condition that I want to use only get the last modified record which has a recruiter value as not blank, and I want to sort it by descending, and the field that I want to use here is last modified date. Now here I want to get only one record. So usually this query will get all job application records, and it is sort the records by descending order using the last modified date. So the most recently modified record will be on the top in the list. So that record is what I want to return. So I'm saying only the first record. Here, if you see, I'm just getting one record. That's why it is saying record, not collection. I'll create a new variable. I'll call it as last JA. I want to store record. The record that I'll be storing is job application. Click on done. So this get records will get me the last modified job application record and store it in last JA variable. I want to count the number of available recruiters and store it in a variable. For that, I'm using an assignment. I'll call it as assign recruiter count. For this, I'll create a new variable. I'll call it as var count. Data type is number, no decimal places. Count is always integer. The default value, I'll put it as 0. Click on done. And I want to store the count of the list variable. So for that, you can use equals count operator and give the list variable name. It will go and count the number of recruiters that are there in this list and store that count into this variable. So I have a last modified job application that also has a recruiter value. Now I want to see what is the position of this recruiter in this list. So for that, I'll do a loop. I'll call this as iterate through recruiters, and I want to iterate through recruiters from first item to last item. And during this iteration, I want to use a variable and store the current iteration position in that variable. So for that, I'm using an assignment operator. I'll call it as assign current position. So I'll create a new resource of type variable, call it as where position, data type is number, decimal places 0, default value as 0. Click on done. Now first time when it iterates, this will contain a default value of 0 initially. Every time it comes in, I want to add a value of 1 to it. Then I have the current position of this iterated record. I will check if this current position is equal to the recruiter's position in the list. So for that, I want to use a decision box. I'll call this decision as check last recruiter position in list, and I'll give the outcome as is last modified recruiter same as current recruiter. Last modified recruiter is in last JA. I want to get the recruiter value from that, and I want to check if the current recruiter, current item in loop dot ID. So if this user ID is equal to the recruiter ID, then it means that the current position is matching this position. So if it is true, I want to consider this as a last index and store this current position as the last index position. So for that, I'll create an assignment. I'll call this as update last index, create a new variable called as var last index, which is of type number, decimal places 0, default value is 0. And I want to assign the current position, which is in variable position, to this position. So my last index will be current position. I'm going through each record in the recruiters list, and I'm checking what is the position of the last modified job application index. So I'm getting the last modified index, and I'll use that index for making my next assignment to the recruiter. So once I'm done with this, I want to compute the next recruiter index. After coming out of this loop, I want to do a computation for my next index. For that, I'll use one more decision box where I'll check if last index is greater than 0. So if it is greater than 0, I have to set a next index accordingly. So I'll pull an assignment, assign next index. So here I'll create one more variable. I'll call it as var next index, and this will be the index using which I'm going to do the assignment for my new record. So I'll use the last index and total count of recruiters, and I'll do a modular operation, and I'll store the result of that into this variable. Create a new formula. I'll call that as var next index formula. Data type is number, decimal places is 0. So the formula will be mod of variable last index, comma, var count. This has the total number of recruiters, and I want to add 1 to it. So this will do a modular operation by last index and count and add 1 to it, and that will be my next index. So I'll use that variable here. My next index will be the result of that formula field. I'll click on save. Then once I have my next index, the next thing that I'll do is I will reset my position values. Reset var pos, where variable position or position variable. So I'll say variable position equals to 0. Now after resetting my position, I'm adding one more loop saying iterate recruiters for assignment. I'll use the same collection variable, first to last element, and within this I'll use the position variable that I have reset. Assignment, assign position, variable position, add 1. Then so I'll use a decision box. I'll say calculate position check. So here I'll give an outcome as is variable position same as variable next index. If both are equal, then I want to use that variable and get the respective recruiter and return that value. If variable position equal to variable next index, the one that I calculated in my previous step. If both are equal, then I want to get the recruiter in that position and store that in one more variable. I want to do one more assignment, assign user ID to variable pick. So I'll create a new variable. I'll call it as var pick, which is of type text. And I want to store the recruiter's ID here. Loop. So I have two loops. Be careful, like you should use the proper loop. So I'm in the iterate recruit for assignment loop. So I'll select that recruiter and I'll get the ID from that recruiter. So which is nothing but the user ID from that, and I'm storing that user ID in a variable called varPick. Now I have my user ID, and after coming out of the loop, I'll do one more last assignment, assign recruiter to job application. So here I'll use record.recruiter equal to varPick. That is where I have the user ID, and I'll click on save. This flow runs before save on the job application object whenever a new application is created or when the recruiter field is blank during an update. The first step is to retrieve the pool of eligible recruiters and store in a collection. Next, the flow retrieves the most recently assigned job application where recruiter is populated, ordering by last modified date and ID in descending order, and limiting the results to only the first record. This ensures we are working with the latest committed assignment. Once we have that record, the flow loops through the recruiter collection to find the position index of the last assigned recruiter. It then calculates the next position using a formula field which wraps around the first recruiter when the end of the list is reached. In the second loop, the flow locates the recruiter at this calculated index and assigns them to the recruiter field without performing any additional database writes. Because it is a before save flow, these changes are applied just before the record is committed, making it efficient and governor limit friendly. However, this approach relies on reading the last assigned record from committed data, so it works reliably in UI transactions and data loads with batch size of 1, where each record is processed and committed individually. In scenarios where multiple records are created in the same transaction, such as bulk data loads with batch size greater than 1 or parallel inserts via the bulk API, all records will see the same last assignment and assign the same recruiter, breaking the round-robin sequence. For those cases, a deterministic assignment formula or a counter persisted in custom object and updated in an after-save flow or Apex is recommended. While this solution demonstrates a useful business scenario, the main intention here was to showcase the variety of flow elements supported in the before-save flow, including get records, assignment, loop, decision, and formula elements, and how they can be combined to build a meaningful automation without any Apex code. This example gives learners a practical way to see how before save flows can handle logic, calculations, and field updates entirely in memory. Let us see the round robin example in action. I'm going to my job applications tab and I'm clicking on new job application. I'll select a candidate, a position. So let me also select initial screening on the stage, and I'm not selecting any other fields, not even recruiter. Clicking on save. Once I click on save, if you observe, the first recruiter is assigned to this record. Let me create one more job application record, this time with C001 and senior director, and click on save. Once I click on save, if you see, this record is assigned to recruiter 2. So I created two records, 16 and 17, and for 16 recruiter 1 was assigned and for 17 recruiter 2 was assigned. If you remember, we have only 2 recruiters in our system. Whenever a new job application is created, the recruiter assignment is done in a round robin fashion. We would like you to take on 2 final requirements as a hands-on exercise. These will help reinforce everything we have covered and give you additional practice with before save and flows. The first requirement is to extend the before save flow so it automatically sets compliance and document flags on the job application record based on the provided business rules. The second is to enhance our recruiter assignment logic by tracking how many times each recruiter has been assigned in the current week. I have provided a PDF in the video description with detailed step-by-step instructions for completing both requirements. Following our demonstration, it is important to highlight the limitations and design best practices associated with before save flows so you can use them effectively without unintended side effects. Before save flows can only update fields on the record that triggered the flow. You cannot create, delete, or update related records. These flows are server-side only. They do not support screen elements, lightning components, or visual force pages. This makes them fast but unsuitable for any process requiring user input or feedback. You cannot call other flows, invoke Apex classes, or make HTTP callouts. If you need those actions, an after save flow is the right alternative. Be careful when designing flows that trigger on updates, especially if they modify fields that could trigger another update. Without proper entry conditions, you could unintentionally create recursion loops, degrading performance or causing errors. Before-save flows are best for simple field level updates. If your automation involves cross-object logic, task creation, or integration with external systems, an after-save flow or Apex is more appropriate solution. These limitations are intentional by design to keep before-save flows lightweight, high performing, and safe for high volume use cases. Up next, we will look at exactly why these design choices matter by diving into the performance benefits of before-save flows compared to legacy tools like Process Builder and Workflow Rules, and when you should always prefer them. Now that we have discussed the limitations and design considerations of before-save flows, let us turn our attention to why Salesforce recommends them for field updates and their performance advantage. Compared to traditional tools like Process Builder and Workflow Rules, before-save flows offer several key benefits that make them the go-to solution for efficient automation. Before-save flows execute entirely in memory without performing additional DML operations. This means they process updates before the record is saved, making them significantly faster than tools that run post-save. In contrast, Process Builder and Workflow Rules involve additional processing steps and execute only after the record is committed to database, introducing extra overhead. Process Builder is converted to a flow in runtime, which adds an additional overhead. Because they don't require DML or SOCL calls, before-save flows are more lightweight and consume fewer governor limits. This efficiency makes them more scalable, especially in high-volume environments like data migrations, mass updates, or integrations. They help you stay well within governor limits even when processing hundreds of records in a batch. By leveraging the speed and simplicity of before-save flows, you not only improve system performance but also deliver faster user experiences, reduce technical debt, and increase the long-term maintainability of your automation strategy. Building on our discussion of the performance benefits of before-save flows, let us now shift our focus to their powerful counterpart, the after-save flow. While before-save flows are optimized for simple same-record field updates that run in memory, after-save flows execute after the record is committed to the database. This unlocks a wider range of automation capabilities. With after-save flows, you can create or update related records, send email alerts, generate tasks or charter posts, invoke Apex actions or external services, launch subflows for reusable logic. This makes after-save flows ideal for more complex, multi-step automations that go beyond modifying the triggering record. In our next session, we will explore the structure, supported actions, and real-world use cases of after-save flows and how they complement before-save flows to give you full control over record-triggered automation in Salesforce. Before we wrap up, I would like to remind you how you can continue learning and get the most out of this Salesforce training path. If you have found this session valuable, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new lesson. It is a simple way to stay updated and also helps us reach more learners like you. And for those who want to take their learning further, visit trailblazertutor.com. There you will find the complete Salesforce learning path with step-by-step demos, detailed assignments, and plenty of hands-on exercises to help you apply what you have learned in real-world scenarios. Your engagement, whether it is a like, a share, or a subscription, motivate me to keep producing high-quality, practical Salesforce content for you. So thank you in advance for being part of this learning journey.